So, to continue, balikan ko lang muna yung government kasi I think I was not able to fully talk about the context of obedience with the government as an agent of socialization. So, to simplify na lang din, the thing with the government, unlike schools, is in terms of imposing rules or formal rules, the government penalizes in a way that you'll be jailed, you'll be paying a hefty fine if you are not to follow the certain regulations, rules, or laws that they are imposing. Because the thing with the government in comparing sa school, because similarly nagtuturo sila nag, na mag-conform tayo sa rules, pag-follow ng formal rules. The thing with the government is because they are focusing on security, if you are not to follow or to the laws or regulations and you are then harming other people's security, yung penalty nun is um, if you're familiar, again, being in prison, paying a hefty fine, and similarly, you'll be stigmatized, okay, in a way that you'll be considered as a felon or a criminal. And that's the thing with the government because simil unlike schools who are more lenient when it comes to formal rules because nasa stages ka pala ng pag-aaral ng mga batas or mga tawag dito, pagiging responsable or produktibong miyembro ng lipunan, the government imposing the rules on you sa mga, on that particular stage as an agent of socialization is nasa panahon of you're of legal age. And if you're of legal age, you have that certain responsibilities to follow as part of a certain group and a community. As such, they are to teach obedience, to follow religiously, to conform religiously to a certain sets of rules and regulations that the government is imposing upon a certain community or a certain group of people. So, moving on, balikan ulit natin yung question na kanina na how do we construct our identity of the self, no? So kung kanina or the previous lecture, we've described identity formation or we've answered how do we construct ourselves by focusing on the agents of socialization, family, primary agent of socialization, then the peer group, religion, school, government, workplace, and primarily those institutions or social groups that uh, influences us into being who we are right now. However, this time around, we'll focus on 4 particular theories that construct or explains how we actually create our self of our this so-called self identity of ours. So the thing with the self is it's a perceptions we have of who we are, which are developed from our perceptions of the way others respond to us in a myriad of interactions. So ito yung kung paano natin pine-perceive yung sarili natin na majority ang basis natin ay kung paano tayo pine-perceive or tinitignan ng ibang tao. The development of the self begins at birth through infancy, and both biology and sociology contribute to the development of the self. However, ang focus natin dito is sociology or the social sciences. Psychology and sociology. Because the thing with self is, or the concept of the self is, it's a distinct identity that sets us apart from others. Walang unique na konsepto or walang unique na identity ng self. Walang unique na self-identity rather. Yung pagkatao natin ay iba sa iba. Kahit kakambal mo yan, malamang sa malamang, marami kayong differences. Because the self is not unique, or rather it's not, it's a distinct, it's a unique concept. At the same time, the self is not a static phenomenon. Yung konsepto mo ng sarili, nagbabago at nagbabago yan. Okay? It's a very much adaptive concept, idea. It continues to develop and change. At yung changes na yun, depends on particular stage of your life. Because the thing with the self is, it always tries to develop, it always tries to change. Regardless if that's for the better or for the worse. Regardless kung it's a conscious or unconscious na proseso. But what's clear is, our identity, our self, our concept of ourself always changes. Iba yung pagkatao mo nung pagkakilala mo sarili mo nung elementary ka, nung high school ka, at siguro ngayong senior high ka, at pag nag-college ka na. Kung dati mahilig ka pa selfie ng mga duck face, ganon. Ngayon, you won't even do that. Para mas maganda siguro, madaling exercise, balikan mo yung Facebook account mo 5 years ago. Tignan mo yung mga pinopost mo na photo, sinishare mo na items. Alam mo, may ganun na feature sa Facebook, pwede mong balikan. Or pag ganun, lumalabas yung memories, no, sa timeline mo. Tignan mo kung ano yung mga pinopost mo dati para makita mo, ay ganito pala ako before. Mahilig pala ako sa mga retrika. Ay mahilig pala ako sa duck face na selfies. Ay mahilig pala ako sa mga nakakeme. Ano wala yung mukha ko dun, puro noon na lang, no. Nakakeme ng mga what do you call this? Photos, selfies. But that's the thing. Nowadays, siguro hindi mo na basta-basta ginagawa 'yon. You're taking a more what do you call this? Vain na demure, I think, no, na versions of yourself, because again, the self changes. At kung bakit yung nagbabago, meron tayong 4 na approaches: psychological and sociological or social approaches. First is Freud's theory on socialization. Then we have Cooley's looking glass self. Then we have Erik Erikson's psychosocial development, and lastly, Goffman's presentation of the self. For Freud, si Sigmund Freud is a well-known, famous psychologist, clinical psychologist. For him, the self is a social product. Alam niyan, malinaw na ito ay produkto ng lipunan. However, natural impulsive instincts in constant conflict with societal constraints. Ibig sabihin, while yes, ang pagkatao ko or nyo is a social product, merong constant conflict yung natural instincts daw natin with societal constraints, or what particular societal stimulus or social stimulus are happening around us. Similarly, our personality is very much influenced by others. It can be our parents, it can be our friends, primarily our friends, it can be the government, it can be our religion. But the thing is, it's very much influenced by the others because ourself is a social product. Malinaw na produkto to ng lipunan. However, merong say yung isip natin. For Freud, may say tayo kung ano yung mga bagay na gugustuhin nating maging bahagi ng sarili natin. It's a form of, yung kanyang theory on socialization, it's a form of biological determinism which holds that socialization is a process characterized by the internal struggle between, kunin ko lang to, no, the biological components of ourselves, of our minds particularly, and the social-cultural environment. Meron siyang 3 major systems of personality. For him, the way we form or create our identity, construct our identity, is very much based from these 3 major systems of personality. Yung tinatawag niyang id, ego, super ego. I hope narinig nyo na to, no? Some point, siguro. The thing with the id, ego, and super ego, tama pala. id, ego, super ego. Ulit ko lang. Is that these are three particular how do I call this, concepts or components that are found in our minds. These are how these components, this dictates how we accept or reject the things that are happening around us. So naniniwala kasi si Freud na meron tayong conscious at unconscious na mind. Ibig sabihin, the way we define ourselves is very much reliant kung paano tinatanggap ng utak natin, ng kaisipan natin, at nire-reject ng kaisipan natin yung mga bagay na dumarating sa buhay natin. Similarly, for him, the id is the biological component. It's the source of a number of drives and urges. It centers around the satisfaction of basic needs, operates on the pleasure principle. Naniniwala si Freud na kung ano yung mga bagay na gusto nating i-accept at i-reject, dadaan yan dito sa tatlong konsepto na ito. Okay, the id, which is it's the unconscious. Okay, unconscious daw yan. Kasi, hindi mo na mamalaya, merong ganito ka palang mga drives and urges. The super ego, which is both the moral arm of personality representing the traditional values, rules, and ideals of society, which is both in the unconscious and the conscious. Yung unconscious niya is the particular beliefs that are said to be part of an individual, mga tinuro sa'yo nung bata ka pa lang na nakalimutan mo na because as you grow old, there are things in your lives that are shoved down the memory cabinet. Kung tandaan niyo yung episode SpongeBob na memory cabinet, yun yung magandang description ng id, ego, super ego. Tapos yung conscious, ito yung mga bagay na aware ka ngayon kasi on a daily basis, naririnig mo at tinuturo mo. Then we have the ego. The ego is the mediator. It's in the unconscious at pre-conscious. So, we won't dig deeper into this. Okay? Why? Kasi mostly psychological yung kanyang, rather, may malalim pa na gustong iparating si Freud when it comes to understanding how our brain, because ito yung brain, ito yung minds natin sa paningin niya. Focus na lang tayo dito sa three particular concepts at kung paano siya i-apply, kung paano natin kinakonstruct ang sarili natin. Okay? So, the ego is the mediator between the individual needs and the real world, which controls the cognitive and intellectual processes. Okay? Para mas madali, bigyan natin example. So, continue. The thing with the ego and super ego is there are things that are happening around us that we tend to think are just happening without any processes taking place, particularly in our minds, no? In our minds. But the thing with Freud, sa paniniwala niya, ganito, hopefully kita nyo in its simplest context, kita nyo kaya, the id is the pleasure principle. So yung magsasabi na, halimbawa ito, ang konsepto natin is gusto mong kumain ng chocolate. Okay. Sasabihin ng id mo, representation ko is the demon, no? Sige, kumain ka ng chocolate. Because the thing with the id, rather, is the id always wants for you to, focus on your pleasures. Okay? To focus on your pleasures. The id always wants us to pleasure ourselves. The id yun the id. The id is the pleasure principle. Sige, kumain ka ng chocolate. Yung mga ganun. Ganun yung mindset niya. Gawin mo yung gusto mo. The super ego naman, it tries to tell you na bakit ka kakain ng chocolate? Di ba nagda-diet ka? Masama yun. Sayang yung diet mo kung kakain ka ng chocolate. The thing with the super ego is it's the moral arm. It tries to focus on our morality, what is right and what is wrong. So it questions the id if what what the id is doing is acceptable or not for you. So nagtatalo yung id at superego kung ano yung mga bagay na dapat mong gawin. Ito gusto mong gawin, sabi ng id, gawin mo yan kasi gusto mo yan para ma-satisfy ka. Pleasure principle eh. Sabi ng superego, wag, hindi naman yata yan tama. Bakit mo gagawin yan? Because it's the moral arm. However, sa utak daw natin, merong pangatlo na nagbi-mediate, the ego. The ego, hindi siya yung pride, no? Hindi siya yung pride na alam natin. The ego is the ones who tries to mediate, tries to balance. Okay? To balance both the id and the superego. Siya nagsisilbing rational arm natin. Rationality. Pinag-iisipan niya ano yung best of both worlds. So sabihin niya, kung sinabi ng id na, kainin mo yan chocolate. Sabihin ng superego, wag, masama yan sa'yo kasi nagda-diet ka. Sasabihin ni ego, kumain ka ng maliit lang na chocolate. Small bar of chocolate or piraso lang ng chocolate para lang matikman mo siya. At least hindi apektuhan yung diet mo, pero na-pleasure mo yung sarili mo. That's the thing. Wait, kita nyo ba, no? Hopefully, kita nyo, ano? Yan. That's the thing with id, ego, and superego. That's how we, according to Freud, how we try to accept and reject or decide on the things that we want to be part of us. Representation ko sa niya is, the id is the devil, the ego, the superego is the angel, usually, no? Pero yung ego, siya daw yung nag-iisip, kaya may bulb dyan. And for Freud, that's how we think, no? That's how we accept the things that are happening around us. That's the internal conflict. However, hindi porket the id is the pleasure principle, hindi porket superego is the moral arm, at hindi porket the ego is the rational mind, rationality, hindi laging ego yung nasusunod. Hindi laging yung mediation. Hindi laging yung best of both worlds ang nasusunod. Kasi minsan, kung halimbawa, may long test kayo ngayon, or long test kayo ngayon, pero nag-binge watch pa rin kayo kagabi, kasi may bago kayong Korean novela na nakita at gustong tapusin, malamang sa malamang, ang nasunod sa inyo is your id. You want to satisfy your pleasure. Okay? Kahit sinasabi ng superego, wag, may test ka pa bukas. May long test ka pa bukas. Or, ang sasabihin naman ng ego sa ganong konsepto, mag-binge watch ka habang nagre-review para best of both worlds. Ikaw na bahala kung anong kakalabasan. But, you've tried to do the best of a best option out of the two. However, hindi laging ego yung nasusunod. At hindi laging effective din yung ego. Okay? In trying to balance out the two. Kasi, lalo kung teenager ka, you always want to seek pleasure. You always want to satisfy those drives and urges. As such, the id, in your case, tends to take over. Kaya nga, minsan, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga maling choices. Pinagsisisihan natin choices during your teenage formative years. Why? Because the id tends to take over. And the thing is, hindi naman mali yun. Because that's how our biological components or the biological minds work. Sabi nga dito, sabi ni id, yes. Yes lagi ang sagot sa mga bagay-bagay. Sabi ni superego, no. Okay? Sabi ni ego, fight, ano yun? Lagi niyang kino-question. Okay? Binabalance out niya. Magtatalunan ba natin ng isang bagay? Bakit natin pagtatalunan ng isang bagay? In a nutshell, the id always, I want it now. The answer is, I want it now. Kung may bagay na dumating sa'yo, may bagay na gusto kang gawin, ang sagot niya, yes, gawin mo yan. Manood ka lang, mag-binge watch ka, huwag ka na mag-aral. Maglaro ka, huwag ka na mag-aral. Sabi ni superego, you can't have it, it's not right. Hindi pwede, may exam ka pa bukas, may long test ka pa bukas. Bakit ka mag-binge watch? Bakit ka maglalaro, magpupul ng all-nighter? And sasabihin ni ego, I need a bit of planning to get it. Pag-isipan ko, ano nga ba yung best way para magawa ko yung dalawa, no? Masatisfy ko yung dalawa. But the thing is, yun yung Yung tatlong yun yung basis natin ng pag-iisip. However, hindi lagi nasusunod kung ano yung nasa gitna. Hindi lagi yung ego ang nasusunod. Mas madalas, id, pero may times, lalo kung you're from a very religious background, your super ego or your moral arm tends to always take over.